Uncover the sinister secrets of the cursed. Press play to reveal 12 haunting tales that terrify. Jane stood in her new living room, the crackle of static filling the air as she set the old VHS tape, 12 Haunting Tales, in the player. It had been a long day unpacking in the weathered house on Maple Street, worn walls whispering forgotten stories. Her heart raced with hope and dread. She'd finally escaped the nightmares of her past, but here, in this quiet suburb, something felt off. As the opening credits rolled, the room darkened, shadows stretching like grasping fingers against the walls. She gathered Alex and Mia close, wrapping her arms around them, as if they could shield each other from the unsettling pull of the unknown. The cheerful laughter of children outside faded, replaced by a chilling silence. When the first story began, an invisible weight settled upon her shoulders, making it hard to breathe. The tale resonated disturbingly with her own struggles. A young mother, drowning in debt, desperately trying to protect her children from an unseen terror. Jane's pulse quickened, the too familiar anxiety jabbing at her gut. Clutching her kids tighter, she suppressed a shiver, convinced that she'd made a mistake by pressing play. Then came the whispers. Soft, mournful sounds that crept through the walls as the story unfolded. "Mom, did you hear that?" Mia peered into the shadows, eyes wide, terror flashing across her small face. Alex nodded, grasping her hand a little too tightly. The house felt alive, and Jane's chest constricted. Their laughter outside transformed into a muffled, eerie echo, as if the neighborhood was holding its breath. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue, with the second tale. Dread thickened. Shadows danced, and the flicker of the television cast a spectral glow around them, each thump of a branch outside sounding like a heartbeat in the night. Strange images of betrayal unspooled on screen. Jane felt the walls close in, the air heavy with secrets. Could these stories hold truths about her new neighbors? The stakes rose as odd occurrences began to pepper her nights. The lights would fail, leaving her in darkness, and strange, muffled cries seemed to echo from unseen corners of the house. The neighbor, Mr. Thompson, who always offered friendly smiles, lingered too long at their door. Something about his kind eyes seemed too deep, hiding shadows beneath the surface. Each smile dripped with a tension Jane couldn't shake. Then, one terrible night, everything fractured. Alex slipped out to meet Mr. Thompson, and the unthinkable happened. Panic surged through Jane as she searched the empty neighborhood, desperately calling for her son, the streets eerily silent. Twisted vines clung to abandoned homes, grips of neglect that felt like a metaphor for her own past horrors. What if the darkness swallowed her children like the tale's warning of despair? As dread bled into her thoughts, Jane discovered that escaping her past wasn't just a move but a fight won against the haunting of both her psyche and the neighborhood around her. Shadows seemed to whisper cruel secrets, and in that moment, she realized, the real horror was hunting them, and they were too close to the edge. What lurked behind the veil of suburbia? And how far would Jane go to protect her children from horrors that might be all too real? The search felt eternal. Each second stretched into a consuming abyss as Jane raced through the neighborhood, her screams echoing off the empty houses. Shadows flitted past her peripheral vision, agitating her already frayed nerves. She couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were watching her from behind the tattered curtains, lurking just out of sight. "Alex." Her voice trembled, cracking under the weight of fear. The silence settled heavily, pressing against her like a physical force. Her mind raced. Where could he be? Had he gone down to the park? Her heart ached, and a cold sweat broke out across her brow. She could sense an eerie shift in the air, as if the neighborhood itself held its breath, waiting for something to happen. Then she heard a soft, familiar giggle drifting from a shadowy corner of the street. Her stomach twisted. It sounded like Alex, but wrong. Was it really him? Uncertainty gnawed at her. Alex. She called again, louder, more desperate now. As if in answer, the sound grew closer, wrapping around her like a dark, twisted vine. She stumbled toward the sound, her heart thudding violently in her chest. Each step felt heavy, the weight of impending dread looming larger. Just ahead, a flicker of movement caught her eye. It was him. Relief washed over her momentarily, but then she saw a figure beside him. Alex, no. Her voice blared like a siren. The outline of Mr. Thompson loomed above her son, his face obscured in shadows. He was kneeling, whispering something into Alex's ear, his presence somehow more sinister than inviting. The moment stretched, freezing time. Jane felt paralyzed. A sickening chill swept down her spine as Alex turned to her, eyes wide and uncomprehending, as if he were both there and somewhere far away. They stood as if caught in a tableau, the weight of the scene suspended like a fragile balance on the edge of a knife. What is going on? Jane's voice cracked again. She took a cautious step forward, instinctively shielding Mia behind her, desperate to keep the chill of the night from reaching her girl Damar. Thompson stood, but instead of retreating, he advanced slightly, his smile broadening, yet his eyes stayed hollow. Just telling him a secret, Jane, he said, his voice smooth but laced with an unsettling undertone. Something I think he should know. A sense of dread roiled within her. Let him go. The command burst forth, sharp and filled with the adrenaline of a mother protecting her child. Mr. Thompson's gaze flickered, a glint of irritation crossing his features. Secrets are meant to be shared, or perhaps they should stay buried, he mused, staring deep into Jane's eyes as if trying to penetrate her very soul. The wind whispered through the trees, echoing the tension, and the hairs on Jane's neck prickled. Each heartbeat grew louder, competing against the whispers that snaked around her, growing as thick as fog. Without thinking, she lunged forward, pushing past the veil of dread that enveloped them. It was time to break the silence that clung to the darkness. We're leaving. Now. The moment she reached Alex, she pulled him to her, feeling his small body tense against the chill in the air. But was it too late? Behind her, she heard Mr. Thompson chuckle softly, a sound filled with darkness and malice that sent ice through her veins. You can run, Jane, but the past, it never truly lets go. And just like that, the ground seemed to tremble underfoot. A shiver passed through the air, causing Jane to glance back at the figure, now fading into the depths of shadow, a lingering promise of horror still lingering in the space between them. As Jane fled the scene, dragging Alex and Mia to safety, dread pounded in her ears. Secrets had begun to unravel, and this was just the beginning. What had Mr. Thompson uncovered about their family's past? Would they ever be free of it? Surely, the tales were only beginning. The night was smothering, the atmosphere charged with raw terror. As Jane sprinted away, she felt the weight of Mr. Thompson's words press down on her like an iron fist. The past never truly lets go. It echoed in her mind, reverberating with every hurried step. She could barely hear Mia's panicked breaths, her own heartbeat drowned by fear. Mom, he was saying something. What did he mean? Alex's voice trembled, the innocence he clung to slipping through his fingers. Jane could barely form a response, the words caught in her throat. How could she explain the dread curling within her? Let us just get home. We'll talk when we're safe, she finally managed, her voice taut. They raced through the faint glow of streetlights, shadows swirling threateningly around them. Each flicker plunged them deeper into uncertainty, and Jane felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. She glanced back, half expecting to see Mr. Thompson following, but only darkness loomed. Mom! Mia cried, clutching her hand tighter. I'm scared. Jane's heart shattered at the sound of her daughter's fear. She pulled Mia closer, trying to find comfort in the small warmth of her body. I know, sweetheart. Just hold on tight. As they rounded a corner, Jane's breath caught. A figure stood at the end of the street, watching them. Her stomach dropped, it was impossible to make out the face, just an outline cloaked in shadow. Fear skittered across her skin, and she instinctively picked up her pace. The figure didn't move, but she could feel its eyes boring into her back as they hurried away. "What's wrong, Mom?" Alex asked, sensing the sudden shift. "Nothing. Just keep moving." The urgency in her voice was sharp, cutting through the night. "Why is it getting colder?" There was fear in Alex's tone now, the last shreds of childish innocence crumbling beneath the weight of reality. The air swirled with whispers, chilling gusts. Jane could hear her own breath echoing, and the wind seemed to murmur secrets of its own. They turned onto their street, but it felt different. The familiar sight of their home, warmly lit in the distance, felt alien now. Suddenly, a loud crash reverberated from their house. Jane froze, dread coiling in her gut. What was that? And maybe it's Dad. Mia stammered, her voice quivering. No, Jane whispered, her mind racing. He shouldn't be home yet. She peered toward the house, panic twisting inside her. Stay here, she commanded, forcing her legs to move forward. Creeping toward the threshold, she glanced back at the children, their faces pale and wide-eyed. The front door stood ajar, swinging slightly in the wind. She cursed under her breath, every instinct screaming at her to run away. With trembling fingers, she pushed the door wider. It creaked ominously, revealing a darkness that felt oppressive, heavy with the sense of a threat lurking just beyond the boundaries of sight. "Hello," she called, her voice cracking and weak. The silence loomed, thick and suffocating. Suddenly, out of the corner of her eye, she caught a fleeting figure darting through the shadows inside. "Alex! Mia! Stay back!" she shouted, though she could hardly hear her own words over the pounding of her heart, but it was too late. They had already burst into the house, drawn by a powerful instinct to protect. Just as Jane reached for them, the door slammed shut behind her with a bone-rattling thud. Trapped, Jane whirled around, terror flooding her veins. "What's happening?" Then she heard a slow, deliberate breathing rising from the darkness. Shadows thickened around her. She realized, suddenly, that she wasn't alone. "Secrets will always find their way home," a voice rasped from the gloom, sending a wave of ice through her blood. Jane's eyes widened in horror as she desperately searched for a way out. Just beyond the reach of the dim light, shapes began to coalesce, twisting and merging into forms that felt eerily familiar. What were those faces? Why did they seem to know her? The weight of the evening settled like a block of ice in her chest. They weren't safe. Not yet. Not ever. As the shapes converged, a chilling truth hit her. The past, it seemed, had finally come calling. And this time, it might not let them go. And then she remembered Mr. Thompson's laughter. Was he already here? In the darkness, a question loomed. What would happen when the past finally caught up with them? The air thickened, stirred by the low, guttural breaths echoing from the corners of the room. Jane's heart hammered violently against her chest as she struggled to make sense of the faces slowly emerging from the murky shadows. Each one flickered in and out of clarity, a sickening dance of familiarity and fear. "Mom!" Mia's voice shattered through the darkness, her small frame pressed against Jane's side. Alex had positioned himself between his mother and the ominous figures, attempting to be brave, though his knuckles were white as he clutched the back of Jane's shirt. "Get back!" Jane shouted, stepping protectively in front of her children. The figures grew more defined, revealing hollow eyes and contorted faces twisted with sorrow and rage. They were not strangers. They were echoes of memory's fingertips grazing against Jane's past, clawing to resurface. "What do you want?" she demanded, though her voice quivered, as if the question itself was a challenge. They paused, frozen like statues, before stepping closer, mouths moving silently, yet their words filled the room with a dissonant chorus. "You left us, you forgot us." The truth of their haunting murmurs spread a chill down her spine. The memories, her choices shackled her to this moment. Jane had buried them deep, inside a part of herself she never wanted to revisit. But here they were, clawing for recognition, for vindication. Nearby, they felt her fear like a feast, and it fed their dark intentions. "Let us get out of here." Alex's urgency pierced through the heavy tension, but Jane felt rooted to the spot, heart racing as her mind battled the suffocating dread. "Mom, please." Mia whimpered, eyes wide with terror. All Jane could think was how fragile their lives had become since the moment those memories emerged. She glanced back toward the closed door, now a solid barrier of prison trapping them inside her haunted past. The figures shuffled forward, drawing closer. Jane could now see their features, the pallid skin, the jagged mouths, slippery with hunger. Guilt washed over her like a wave, but there was something else too, an insatiable need to fend them off, to protect her children. Her instinct to survive ignited in a furious blaze. "Stay back!" She shouted again, her voice trembling but resolute. "I didn't forget. I just..." The sentence staggered off, tangled between her emotions. She didn't know how to explain that she only wanted to shield them from the darker fragments of her history. One of the figures, a woman with sunken cheeks and eyes that hollowed out the darkness, hissed. "You can't escape what you've done." She reached out a hand, bony fingers stretching toward Jane. "You owe us your truth." Jane recoiled, a wave of nausea crashing in her gut. "No. Leave us alone." Suddenly, flashes of memory surged through her mind, an argument, a fiendish betrayal, a choice made in desperation. Faces of lost friends and distant laughs, now twisted into dreadful grins. The shadows pressed closer, the air turning thick with desperation and betrayal. An icy draft swept past her, chilling her to the bone, and Jane realized they were closing in. "We need to go now," she gasped, an ember of urgency igniting in her chest. Mia held Jane's arm tight, Alex darting around, wild eyes searching for anything resembling hope. But in the suffocating gloom, mere shadows threatened to close in, to drown her and her children, to plunge them into darkness together with her past. Jane clutched her children, forcing a breath out. She turned to face the door, feeling the pull of the shadows at her back. The figures didn't relent, pressing in with suffocating intent. In that instant, she felt something soft and warm against her leg. Mia's stuffed bear. Jane ripped it from the floor and hurled it toward the figures, knowing their grotesque forms would retreat from the familiar anything that represented innocence. The scene froze. The figures reeled, staring at the toy as if it was a holy relic, a piece of the life they had lost. Jane seized the moment, breaking through the wall of shadows. With a fierce strength, she grasped both her children's hands and pulled them towards the door. "Run!" she screamed, and together they dashed into the darkness, leaving whispers of the past behind, but knowing it wasn't that easily severed. As they reached for the door handle, a twisted laughter echoed from within. "You cannot escape what you've birthed." The door swung open suddenly, flooding the world beyond with light, yet Jane hesitated, heart racing. What awaited them outside? Had they truly left it all behind, or was the worst yet to come? As they stepped into the blinding light, the whispers faded, but Jane felt, deep down, that they would come back. They always did. The light swallowed them whole, and Jane squinted against its brightness, disoriented. She stumbled forward, dragging Mia and Alex along. The world outside was stark and jarring, a violent contrast to the suffocating darkness they'd just fled. But the moment they stepped outside, the air felt wrong. The sky, a sickly green, loomed overhead like the eye of a malevolent beast. Jane shivered, the warmth of sunlight failing to banish the cold that had nestled in her bones. Where were the colors? The sounds? It was as if someone had pulled the life from everything around them. "Mom!" Mia's soft voice quivered as she glanced back at the door, still ajar behind them, a yawning chasm that pulsed like a heartbeat. Jane swallowed hard. "Let us keep moving," she urged, forcing her voice to be steady even while dread dripped like poison through her veins. But the path ahead twisted into grotesque shapes, trees warped and knotted as if in pain. The ground cracked and gaped open to reveal dark, trembling roots that clawed up from the bowels of the earth. They were trapped in a nightmare landscape where memories were not lost, but transformed into something grotesque. She pulled her children close, urgency pushing them forward. Every step echoed, the ground a drumbeat of despair, one they couldn't ignore. An oppressive silence draped over everything, suffocating and heavy. "What if they follow us?" Alex whispered, peering back into the darkness where the door was still visible, a specter looming behind them. "They can't," Jane said, though a part of her hesitated. Doubts flooded her mind like sharp needles. They might be gone, but they left their shadows everywhere. As they advanced, she noticed a flicker at the edge of her vision, a shadow darting behind a gnarled tree. She froze. "Did you see that?" she asked, heart hammering against her ribs. Mia nodded, fluid terror in her eyes. "I don't want to play hide and seek, it's just the wind," Jane stammered, trying to dismiss it, though she felt the eyes of the world treacherously watching, waiting. Suddenly, a moan echoed through the air, low and ghastly. The sound wrapped around them, clutching at the edges of sanity. It resonated deep within Jane's chest, awakening something primal, something she couldn't ignore. The mournful cry came again, more distinct this time. It stirred something inside her, a memory fledgling, lost faces, lost time. "Mom, please. We need to go back." Alex's voice broke into her thoughts, panic lacing his words. "No," she snapped, perhaps too harshly. "We can't turn back. We have to find a way out of this." Her heart raced as they pressed on, but each step dragged them deeper into the heart of something malevolent, something breathing. She felt it. The air thickened again, as if laden with the weight of regret, wrapping around them like a noose. "Look!" Mia shouted suddenly, pointing ahead. A clearing stood before them, bathed in a sudden light. But as they drew closer, the realization sunk in. It wasn't light, it was a hollow glow from an old, rusted well at the center of the clearing. Something glistened just beneath the surface. Jane's breath caught in her throat. "What's down there?" Alex asked, his voice a whisper now, trembling. "I don't know," Jane breathed, every instinct screaming at her to run. "Stay close." "We shouldn't." Before she could finish, a figure emerged from the well, soaked and glistening, dragging its body up from the depths. It wore Jane's face, twisted and gaunt, eyes wide with a haunting mix of longing and bitterness. "Jane!" It rasped, voice both hers and not hers. "Come back. I need you." Panic seized her. The shadows whispered around her once more, the memories clawing to be acknowledged. Instinctively, she stepped back, drawing her children with her as they stumbled in fear, but there was no turning away this time. The past had found them. What would they uncover if they dared to look closer? As the figure beckoned with a decaying hand, Jane felt her resolve wavering, a dreadful thought creeping in. What if they were meant to face their past? "Don't let go," she breathed to Mia and Alex, though doubt crept deeper, wrapping its icy fingers around her heart. What awaited them below? A chance for redemption, or a plunge into shadows deeper than they could ever imagine? The figure loomed closer, Jane's heart thumping in her chest like a desperate drum. She tried to swallow the lump in her throat, but it wouldn't budge. Each step back was instinctual, but a strange pull from the figure nudged her forward. "Mom!" Alex trembled beside her, gripping her hand like a vice. "What do we do?" Mia asked, eyes wide and glistening with tears. Their world, already bent and broken, felt as though it might crumble if they didn't act. Jane felt trapped, cornered by the grotesque version of herself rising from that cursed well. Its lips curled into a smile tinged with something dark, something familiar yet perverse. "Stay where you are," Jane shouted, voice laced with fear, but the command seemed hollow. The figure's grip on her gaze grew stronger, pulling her in. In that moment, she could hardly tell if it was a reflection of what she had been, or a harbinger of what she could become. "Mom, please." Alex's voice shook, brittle and fragile. A crack resounded, splitting the air as one of the twisted trees creaked ominously. Jane looked around, panic rising within her. The shadows were thickening, encroaching from the periphery. They were closing in. Stay close. Her own words echoed in her mind while dread washed over her. I'm not leaving you, Jane said fiercely. She could feel the pressure of her past like a weight pressing against her chest, threatening to suffocate her. As the figure continued to rise from the well, Jane caught sight of something shimmering in its hand, a bright pendant that seemed to pulse with light, swirling around it like trapped memories. It was hers, or perhaps it belonged to the woman unfurling from darkness. She felt its familiar warmth, pulling her heart towards it. Mom! Don't! Mia screamed, taking a step away from the well, her instincts screaming to flee. It's just a trick, Jane shouted back, clutching Alex closer. But it wasn't just a trick, it was an invitation, a chance to uncover truths that lurked deep within. Jane could feel her forehead prickling with sweat as she battled between flight and fascination. The creature reached out, skeletal fingers stretching to bridge the void between them. I know you've been hiding, its voice was silk and thorns at once, luring. I'm not hiding, Jane shouted defiantly. The air felt electric, shimmering with a tension that threatened to snap. A howl echoed far in the distance, sending a chill tearing down Jane's spine, an external manifestation of her internal dread. They were not alone here, the shadows were alive, moving and watching with unseen eyes. Suddenly, the figure lunged forward, its hand grasping at the air. Jane yanked her children back, nearly falling into the gaping maw of the well. She turned, adrenaline surging, her instinct finally overriding the dread. They needed to run, they had to escape this malevolence before it ensnared them too, but just as she prepared to flee, a voice echoed from the well, you can never escape me, Jane. The chilling rasp sent shivers down her spine, a reminder of the ghosts they carried within. Jane turned to run, pulling Mia and Alex along as the shadows converged, slithering closer. Panic propelled them through the clearing, but the weight of the figure stayed, its laughter trailing behind them like a dark cloud. Where do we go? Alex cried, fear choking his voice. I don't know. We just keep moving. She shouted breathlessly, the urgency tightening her throat. Turning back, she glimpsed the well once more. It brimmed with a luminescent glow which dimmed the darkness around it, revealing shapes within the shadows. Lingering faces twisted in quiet anguish, calling out in muted tones of despair. Their whispers clawed at her thoughts, echoing hauntingly. Mom? Mia asked, pausing. What if it's not over? Jane's stomach dropped. What if it wasn't he? As they rushed down the path, the cacophony of moans intensified, threading into the fabric of reality around them. The air felt thick and charged, laden with memories ready to unravel. They were not safe yet, not by any means. Suddenly, a figure appeared ahead, blocking their escape. Stay where you are, it shouted, the voice sharp as glass. Its face contorted with an unsettling familiarity. Was this another shard of her past? Or a new horror waiting to unfold? Jane's heart pounded with desperation. What other truths lay hidden in this distorted world? Everything was closing in. Would they find salvation, or be lost in the crescendo of darkness forever? The figure stepped closer into view, casting an elongated shadow that clawed at the ground. Jane squinted through the tangled branches, desperation clawing at her throat as she tried to make out the face twisted by familiarity. It was her, a younger version of herself, eyes ablaze with a cruel light, a reflection from a time she hardly recognized. Don't you remember? The doppelganger whispered, each syllable shimmering with menace. You brought us here. Shut up. Jane barked, yanking her children closer, shielding them with her body. Mia was trembling, gripping Jane's coat as if it were a lifeline. Mom, who is that? What does it want? I don't know, Jane stammered, glancing back at the phantoms writhing in the shadows. Voices murmured from the nether, weaving in and out of coherence, their cries hollow yet inviting. Your past is calling, the figure crooned, stretching a hand toward Jane, fingertips trembling with something that felt both sorrowful and seductive. You can reclaim who you were. Another howl echoed in the distance, shaking the leaves like an unsettled warning. "Don't listen to it," Alex urged, pulling at Jane's arm, eyes wide and glassy. Panic rippled through Jane. "We need to keep moving." But when she turned to flee, the shadows twisted and churned, blocking their path like animated sentinels. Each step forward felt like destiny pulling her back into an embrace that was both warm and suffocating. "What do we do?" Mia cried again, voice small enough to disappear into the darkness. "Together," Jane forced out. "We have to stand together." She was shaking, fear binding her muscles like chains. The memories, the guilt, everything was boiling back up taunting her. The figure flickered like an image captured in poorly tuned television static. "You don't belong to them, Jane," it hissed. "You belong to me." Realization seized her. What if the darkness wasn't just out there but inside them all along? What awaited them behind that door? The light pulsed ominously, waiting. Did it promise safety or a deeper plunge into the truth? They sprinted toward the building, each step marked by the heavy thud of Jane's heart. The light flickered like a beacon, more tempting than the promises of safety whispered by the shadows. But what awaited them inside? The thought clawed at her, sending chills skittering down her spine. "Mom, hurry!" Alex urged, glancing nervously behind, eyes darting as if the shadows were already reaching for them. Jane reached the door and yanked it open, the creak echoing ominously in the stillness. They rushed inside, and Jane slammed it shut, leaning against it for a moment, breath coming in ragged gasps. The air inside felt stale, heavy with unresolved grief and despair, much like the static of her lingering memories. "Is it safe?" Mia whimpered, her tiny voice slicing through the suffocating darkness around them. Jane squinted, trying to discern the room's contours. She could just make out the silhouette of furniture draped in dusty white sheets, ghosts of the past hiding beneath the covers. I think so," she stammered, but dread gnawed at her gut. From outside, the cacophony of laughter mixed with desperate wails reverberated against the thick walls. The shadows thrashed at the door like a storm. Jane could feel their weight pressing against the wood, pushing to break through. It was only a matter of time. "There's no way out." Alex panted, glancing around the room as if searching for an escape route. "What if it finds us?" "Shoo." Jane hushed, straining to listen. The chaos outside felt like it was creeping closer, the overlapping voices morphed into a dark symphony of torment. "We need to find something to barricade the door." As they stumbled deeper into the cramped room, Jane's foot caught on something brittle. She bent down and picked up a small photo frame, coated in years of dust. The image revealed a family, a happy version of herself, her arms wrapped tightly around her children. But behind them loomed an eerie shadow, extending like a dark omen across the backdrop of their smiles. An icy lump formed in Jane's throat. "Look at this," she whispered, breaking the silence. "What is it?" Mia asked, peering closer. "This was us," Jane murmured, the edge of nostalgia mixing with an eerie sense of foreboding. But that shadow suddenly, a gust of freezing air shot through the room, extinguishing the faint light they had. Jane felt a coldness wrap around her like a shroud. Panic struck as she fumbled for her children, heart racing. "Mom! I can't see!" Alex shouted, terror rising in his voice. "We need to find a light, quick." Jane's voice was firm, though she fought to maintain composure. Mia tugged at her coat, desperation spilling over. "Hold my hand, Mom. Don't let go." The shadows danced around them, frantic whispers swirling in the air. Join us, they were like a tide, ever rising and relentless, trying to drown Jane's sanity. As Jane inched forward, she reached a wall, feeling the rough texture of the surface. Then, through the darkness, she found an old lantern, weighted with dust but still intact. "I found something." She dug into her pockets, fingers shaking as she retrieved a match. Scraping it against the wall, a spark ignited, then flared into a flickering light, illuminating their faces pallid with fear. What she saw next nearly caused her to scream. The room was lined with mirrors, casting a web of fractured reflections all around them. In each glass, she saw not just her own frightened face, but hundreds of others twisted, tortured souls frozen in a moment of anguish. "Mom, they're watching us!" Mia shrieked, pressing closer for safety. The lantern shuddered, its light dimming as more shadows surged toward them, growing more desperate. The air crackled with tension, teasing Jane's mind with forgotten snippets of conversations, painful choices made long ago. "You shouldn't have come here," someone whispered in her ear. Suddenly, a voice, heartbreakingly familiar yet warped, called from a distant mirror. "You can't hide from your own darkness, Jane. You brought me here. Who are you?" She gasped, holding the lantern higher, heart racing with recognition but buried in fear. "Do you really want to know?" The voice oozed with malice, echoing through the room. "Think carefully, Jane." Just as the shadows began to swirl up around them again, a chilling thought pierced her. What if the mirror wasn't just a reflection? What if it held the truth she was too afraid to confront? What if this was where it all began? The brightness began to flicker, the shadows converging, closing in, and Jane's heart raced with both dread and a desperate resolve. Together, she whispered to her children. "We will face it together." But what awaited them in that fractured reality? Would the truth free them or consume them whole? The light from the lantern trembled as Jane held it high, casting long shadows against the walls that seemed to writhe with life. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of despair, each voice a dagger twisting deeper into her mind. They weren't merely echoes, they were memories clawing their way back to the surface, relentless and hungry for acknowledgement. "Mom! Please!" Alex's plea trembled in the air, the boy's fear palpable. Jane nodded, but inside her, a storm was swirling, uncertainty battling an overwhelming instinct to flee. "Stay close," she commanded, her voice stronger than she felt. The mirror reflections had her entranced, each face contorted in anguish mirrored her own doubts. She stumbled backward, feeling the oppressive weight of their collective sorrow pressing in. Suddenly, she was struck by an idea, a fractured memory slipping through the haze. "The basement, there was a door," she exclaimed, voice rising above the whispers. The basement, it was a last chance, a hidden place where she used to hide secrets she thought had been buried. "Mom, are you sure?" Mia shivered at the thought of descending into even more darkness. "It might be our only way out," Jane replied, her heart pounding, feeling the shadows inch closer, eager to swallow them whole. With determination, she led the way, the lantern flickering precariously in front of them. The mirror reflections continued to twist, their faces becoming more frenzied as they moved, their anguish deepening. A frantic energy surged through the room, a warning that they were not alone, not anymore. Each step echoed in the confined space, the sound strangely thunderous, as if their very presence desecrated the air. "Mom, what did you hide down there?" Alex whispered, fear tainting his voice. She swallowed hard, uncertainty gnawing at her. It wasn't just her past that haunted these walls, it was her choices, entwined with the darkness sprawled maliciously before them. "Things I should have never done." The door to the basement lay ahead, slightly ajar. Jane gripped the handle, feeling the cold metal bite into her palm. She turned to face her children, their trusting eyes wide with fear. "Whatever happens, remember we're together. We have to stick together." "Okay," Mia nodded, though her voice cracked. Taking a deep breath, Jane pushed the door open. It creaked like a whispered secret, revealing a stairwell that plunged into the abyss. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of dampness and decay, almost a tangible entity that sought to pull them down into its embrace. With the lantern illuminating the first few steps, they descended, shadows curling around them like snakes, flickering in and out of reality. Jane tried to keep her breathing steady, but the air felt charged, the walls enveloping them with a sense of foreboding. As they reached the bottom, the light from the lantern revealed old wooden crates stacked haphazardly, covered in dust and cobwebs. It was a graveyard of forgotten relics. But what caught Jane's attention was a single, locked chest sitting alone in the corner, one that exuded dark energy. The wood was worn and cracked, yet it pulsed with an awful familiarity. What's in there, Mom? Alex asked, stepping closer, drawn to it despite the foreboding aura. I don't know, Jane whispered, fear constricting her throat. But it feels important, dangerous. Just then, the whispers crescendoed, voices shouting, begging, and pleading all at once. Open it. Open it. They screamed, wrapping around her mind like a vice. Mia grabbed Jane's arm, eyes wide with terror. Mom, we need to leave. Now. As if the darkness heard Mia's fear, the shadows surged forward, slithering toward the exit, hungry for release. The lantern flickered violently, each blink a shout of warning as Jane's heart raced. Please, Jane. Open it. The twisted voices urged, coaxing her with promises she couldn't grasp. In that moment, she felt the weight of her choices pressing against her chest. She hesitated, torn between the comfort of ignorance and the terrifying potential of the truth. Mom, Alex squeaked, eyes wide. We won. Survive this if you don't decide. With her breath caught in her throat, Jane reached for the chest, heart hammering in her ears. As her fingers brushed the cool surface, a terrible choice loomed ahead. Would she dare confront the shadows of her past? And what if, in that confrontation, she opened the door to an unspeakable horror? Just then, the lantern sputtered, plunging them into darkness once more. The weight of the moment hung heavily in the air, the darkness swelling around them like a living thing. Jane's heart raced, matching the furious pounding in her ears as she held her breath. The whispers, now an unending chorus, urged her on, but fear clawed at her insides. Could she confront the demons that lay in that locked chest? Mom! Please! Alex's voice trembled, urgency crackling like static against the oppressive silence. Jane's instincts screamed at her to turn back, to escape. But could she really run again? Together, she murmured, half to reassure her children, half to steady herself. We're in this together. With steely determination, Jane grasped the latch of the chest. It felt cool against her skin, a stark contrast to the heat blooming in her chest. The lantern flickered again, casting a dim glow that illuminated her children's anxious faces. We'll deal with whatever is inside. I promise. Taking a deep breath, she pulled the latch free, and the chest creaked open with a heavy groan, echoing in the silence. As the lid lifted, a rush of stale air escaped, and darkness poured out like smoke, swirling around them, thick and oppressive. Inside lay an assortment of forgotten relics, old photographs, mementos, and a neatly folded piece of paper, all cloaked in shadows. Heart pounding, Jane reached for the paper first. Unfolding it, words scrawled in a familiar but frantic hand greeted her. Her own writing. Dear God, what had she forgotten? Mom, what does it say? Mia edged closer, her small frame trembling as she peered at the yellowed paper. Is it bad? Jane's throat tightened. It's a letter to the people I left behind. Her voice shook, memories flooding back unbidden. She could feel the collective weight of regret pressing down. I wanted to protect you. I thought leaving would keep you safe. Is it about Mr. Thompson? Alex asked, a spark of realization in his eyes. He was part of your past. Yes, she whispered, pain flooding her voice. He was part of a life I tried to bury, a life that still clawed at me from the shadows. The shadows around them slithered closer, their whispers growing frantic, clawing for attention, for recognition. Mom! Mia clutched Jane's hand, eyes wide. You need to finish reading it. Taking a shaky breath, Jane continued to read, the words slicing through her, unveiling truths she had kept buried too deep. She recounted betrayal, choices made in desperation, and lost friendships twisted by her actions. Each line bared her soul, raw and crumbling under the weight of truth. I thought I could run away from the darkness, but it's always there, she confessed, voice trembling. I thought I could protect you. But how can I do that when I can't even face my own past? With each word, a strange light began to emanate from the chest, illuminating the relics within. Shadows peeled back, shrinking away from the radiant glow until they flickered into fearful silence. The remnants of sorrow that had long clung to her felt lighter, lifted by the act of facing the truth. "Mom." Alex's voice cut through the tension. "Is it going to be okay? Are we safe?" Jane looked at her children, their faces illuminated with a fragile light. "Yes," she said, feeling strength surge within her. "We can face this together. We can break the cycle." With resolve, she reached for the photographs. Flipping through them, she saw faces shining with joy, memories woven into beautiful moments. As she smiled through the tears, it felt like a thread connecting them to the light within the darkness. Just then, the shadows dissipated into the ether, whispering their final farewell as the echoes of grief turned into soft winds. The oppressive tension that had long gripped her heart faded, replaced with a burgeoning promise of hope. As the chest closed again, light expanded outward, filling the basement with warmth. Jane felt lighter, the burden of her past finally lifting. "Let us go home," she said, eyes sparkling with possibility. As the family ascended the stairs back to the living room, Jane glanced back one last time. Not only had she faced her past, she had confronted the fears that had haunted her every step. The memories would remain, but they wouldn't control her anymore. She was no longer running, emerging into the soft glow of the real world. She pulled both kids close. They stepped through the threshold of their home, a newfound energy coursing through them. Together, she whispered again, her voice steadied. In that moment, Jane knew though shadows may lurk, they would always choose light. And as they held each other tightly, laughter bubbled up, sweeter than the echo of past sorrows, guiding them into their next chapter. This was their family, and together, they would shine. So now, if you loved this story and don't want to miss out on more incredible tales, you need to subscribe right now. Smash that like button so you help the algorithm push our stories to even more people. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts were about this ending and share your theories and reactions. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to feel this vibe. We're all in this together, so let us spread the love.